Welcome to Hoist the Colors. Non-conference plays in the books, I should say, and Seton Hall closed it out strong, beating Monmouth and then going into a neutral game against Missouri and taking them down in Kansas City in very impressive fashion, as really efficient on the offensive end, which we'll hint at, as we break this down. Pat Madden, my co-host, joins me. But joining us on this episode, following, as y'all know, I was president of the Bluebeard Army during my senior year at the Hall, and I'm pleased to be joined by the current president of the BBA, JT Nordenson. JT, really glad that we were able to get you on right before the start of conference play, especially now that you're officially done with finals for the semester.
Thanks for having me on. It's pretty cool.
So, let's start with this past week. Monmouth, not pretty, but hey, a win's a win. And Isaiah Coleman took big steps. JT, I know you're in the building, obviously, protecting the fort down front. What did you see out there? And definitely speak to how impressive this freshman Isaiah Coleman was, in particular Tuesday night.
Going into that Monmouth game, I was just kind of like of that mindset. This game feels like a trap. We win this game, no one really cares. But if we get upset, world's over. But it was a little disappointing from student population there. Probably had a little over 100 people there, but it started showing up. People started showing up, and it got loud, and that was pretty cool to see. People were getting into it, and I think the team reflected on it. Isaiah Coleman was awesome. He was cooking. The whole team, it felt like a good team performance, where had some moments, but still, end of the day, it was a good win. I'll take a non-con win by 9 points any day of the week, no matter who we're playing. Win's a win.
Pat, want to hear your perspective.
Well, the one guy we unfortunately did not discuss last week when we were talking about what's going to happen with this lineup and this rotation was Malachi Brown, who I guess he gets lost for a couple of reasons. One, he's 6'1" and he's totally raw, as opposed to players like Isaiah Coleman, who was a top 100 prospect, a guy like Jaquan Sanders, who's on his second year of the team. And the second thing is, his main job in this roster is to be Kadari Richmond's backup. So the only time you're going to see Malachi Brown is, unfortunately, if Richmond's either in foul trouble or Richmond gets hurt. And then, a lot of people thought going into that Monmouth game, God forbid Richmond gets in foul trouble or Richmond gets hurt. What's Seton Hall going to do? Because their offense already looked horrific most of this season heading into that Monmouth game. So then Richmond gets in foul trouble, gets to 2 fouls, 6 minutes into the game. But, then also you had Dylan Dewusu and Alamir Dawes look a little bit sluggish. So that's when Holloway brought in all the reinforcements: Malachi Brown, Jaquan Sanders, Elijah Everett, and then Coleman. And then they go off on a 17-0 run. Now, unfortunately, Monmouth crawled their way back into the game in the second half. But, Seton Hall was lucky to make enough plays. And Dawes, who, much maligned going into the Monmouth game, made all the big free throws down the stretch to, make sure that Monmouth never got that opportunity to, get back into the game or get back within a possession.
So, so my takeaways, number one, I mentioned it. Isaiah Coleman clearly took a big step forward. Malachi Brown was really solid. Jaquan Sanders, when you needed him to knock down a couple threes, he delivered. Dylan Dewusu, 12 minutes. It's funny how Coleman played 12 minutes against Rutgers and Adewusu played 27, and Adewusu was just ineffective where Coleman in his 12 minutes was. This time around, he flip-flopped, where Coleman plays the 27 minutes, extremely efficient. Adewusu ineffective in 12 minutes. And then, Dre Davis didn't have a great game either, but Bediako, despite foul trouble, put up a double-double in 19 minutes. Hutchins Everett did his job in 10 minutes, got 5 points, but they kept him at arm's length and they were able to do enough to win the game. it wasn't pretty. So that's what got me thinking, I don't know how I feel going into the game against Missouri on Sunday, but they quickly put all that doubt to rest. And Pat, I want to bring this up because that was a talking point for several weeks. Is Alamir Dawes going to figure out how to shoot away from home? I think he did.
Yeah, I was going to say something yesterday about could we move all the Big East games to Kansas City? Well, I'll play Creighton in Kansas City if Dawes is going to shoot like that. And then Wusu hit a few 3-pointers yesterday as well. So it's weird that Dawes is the number one punching bag. We mentioned that last week for Seton Hall fans about everything that's wrong with this team, and then he turns around and gets named Big East Player of the Week. So it's that, but that's just the way Alamir Dawes is. He's going to have nights like he did against Rutgers where he can't seemingly hit a jump shot, and then he's going to have nights like he did last night against Missouri where he's going to look like he's the best 3-point shooter in the Big East. So I really don't, I hate to say it, it's total. He's a total wild card, which is good and it's bad because the flip side to that is that defenses have to be honest against Dawes. Like, if Dawes was still in a shooting slump, UConn would probably just, back off entirely, and it doesn't leave the openings that Kadari Richmond's going to need to attack the paint. They're just going to pack it in the way Rutgers did a week and a half ago. Whereas Wednesday night, players like Spencer and Newton and Caravan are going to have to sag out to the outside because they have to take more seriously the possibility that Wusu, Dawes, and maybe Jaquan Sanders coming off the bench are going to be able to hit some threes.
So JT, watching it from from the lovely South Orange campus, I feel like you couldn't help but be just thoroughly impressed, especially because the starting five dropped 89 of our 93.
And I mean, there was a stat that ESPN put up at one point where Dawes and Wusu had 24 points and the rest of the team had 14 at one point, and I just big smile. Like those are the guys. Like you let those guys get hot, this team can make some noise. I really feel like it because they may be a little more inconsistent, but when they get going, like the team can be a team and be cohesive and fun to watch. And it was definitely an interesting vibe going into the game, especially on campus. Like just talking with some of my friends, just being like, "Oh, we're playing a neutral game in Kansas City versus Missouri that are a good team," and then seeing the start of the game and seeing they've got that 7'5" monster there. I'm blanking on his last name, but number 75.
Yeah, Vanover?
Yeah, I believe so. But had some serious size, and it was like, all right, like, are we gonna be able to do our thing inside? But then we were able to, shoot and actually hit some threes, and it was awesome. It's like, all right, like we can not have to rely on just playing inside. Maybe we can hit some mid range, hit some threes, and it was nice. And then it was definitely fun afterwards to be like, we beat Missouri. This is awesome. Like, sure, it's not a top 5 game of all time, but we were up 20 at one point. It was a lot of fun, and maybe a little crumble late, but I can't complain about a win over Missouri there. I'm a guy that I'll take any win I can get at this point.
So that reminds me now. So their head coach was very, very much singing his praises to this Seton Hall team, saying in the post-game press conference, like, this is a tournament team. I saw that. I'm like, oh. So what did you two make of what he said, especially just given how things have been in non-conference play, but at least finishing strong, what you guys made of that comment?
I think that's coach speak. I have to say that type of now let's put it this way. I thought about, we talked a little bit this before the show, and I didn't quite recognize this Seton Hall team last night because the only game they had where they had an offense, the only 2 games they had an offensive output like that were Albany and Northeastern. And those are 2 teams, frankly, that didn't have the talent to compete with us. Whereas Missouri definitely had the talent to compete. With the 2 teams were basically evenly matched on KenPom going into the game. So they've got something to play with. They're an SEC team. They had taken Kansas to to the final minutes earlier in the week. So it's not like this Missouri team, and as much as this Missouri team's being picked like 10th or 11th in the SEC, a 10th or 11th team in the SEC is still much better than the 6 non-conference games we all won either at the Rock or at Walsh Gym earlier in the season. So I think part of that is coach speak. But the flip side to that is that if you hadn't watched Seton Hall the rest of the season, and this was the first and maybe only time you're watching Seton Hall, you're thinking, this team's going to be ranked tomorrow with just the way they hit the threes, with the way they basically got anything they wanted offensively most of the game. So, maybe because this is the only time that Dennis Gates is seeing these guys in the flesh, he's basically saying, wow, they look like a tournament team yesterday. Whether that translates into Big East play is the big question.
Yeah, are they going to look like that on Wednesday? That's that's going to be the big question. That's where I just hate our schedule. Like I want to be able to go into the Big East tournament hot, and we are toward the Big East season hot, and just big win versus Missouri, and then playing UConn. That's tough. Like but the last 2 times we've played UConn at the Prue, we've beaten them, and they were upsets. Like we weren't projected to win, and we won. So who knows? Maybe we can make some noise on Wednesday and at least keep it competitive. You look at the games we lost. You think USC and Iowa and even Baylor. Even we were in those games at one point. The problem is you start that first half and you put yourself in a double-digit hole quickly. suddenly it's hard to look like a tournament team consistently when you're just constantly climbing and crawling back to get a tie game. But if you look at like the second half of that USC game when they brought it back, or the 5-minute span, I guess, for Baylor, where it's like, oh, maybe we can tie this back up and make some noise here. But I think there's potential with this team. Like, I like this team. I think they can be frustrating at times, as a lot of Seton Hall teams can be. But it's a fun team where, you don't know what you're going to get. So it's a little hedge tails. What are you going to get from them tonight? And I'm just excited to see what happens with UConn. I think, if we get a few wins in Big East, going to Big East tournament way down the line, like that's way down the line. But who knows? Like, you don't know what this team is going to look like in March. There's so many just young guys on this team and new guys that like are exciting to me. Like you guys were talking about Malachi Brown, buy stock now. Doing some John Rothstein out here. Buy stock now. I think he's going to be a bucket come down the line. I think at some point Kadari will probably get hurt, or he'll end up in foul trouble, and Malachi will have to step up and play some. And I liked what I saw of him versus Monmouth, and I wanted him to play some more. Jaquan Sanders, I have friends that are like managers on the team, and they were like, everyone says Jaquan Sanders, best shooter on this team by far. So who knows? Jaquan Sanders, maybe he's coming in and he can be a lights out shooter for us, or just one of those pieces off the bench that can be a fun player. Elijah Hutchins Everett. I'm a big Elijah Hutchins Everett guy, and he's shown some progress over the last few games. Where the first few games, Bediako got in foul trouble. I was like, ooh, do we not have another center that can play? So, Dennis Gates may have just been doing one of those coaching, like, oh, they're a tournament team, that's why we lost, sort of thing. I think it's a fun team that, who knows, maybe they can make some noise, and I'm excited for the season, for like how this rest of this Big East season and Big East tournament way down the line can go. It's a fun team.
So the way I feel, I like the point about it being potentially coach speak. I think is very much valid. I will say though, it obviously right now we're not a tournament team. However, we can most certainly play like one, number one. And number two, if everyone keeps developing and buying into Shah's plan, as it was coined the second he was hired, then yeah, I could see it happening, because it's not like they are completely inept and have zero talent. They're like lucky winning games. I certainly don't think so, especially with how they looked against teams like USC, Iowa, and Baylor. They dropped the ball against Rutgers, but to respond from a disappointing loss like that, Garden State Harbor Classic, in-state rivalry, and you lose that game at home for the first time since the trophy was introduced. For them to respond the way they did, I'm really encouraged by that. So going into this UConn game, and I hinted at this last week. If we could either stay close with Missouri or win it, I would feel a lot better going into the UConn game. And lo and behold, I feel a lot better going into it. I'm definitely not expecting a win, but as JT pointed out, the last 2 times UConn has come to the Rock, the Pirates have been able to win in thrillers, no less, especially that 17-point comeback just last year, taking down a UConn team that was in the middle of what Pat and I have seen over the years, a January swoon, which is a Kevin Willard trademark. But I digress. But going into this UConn game, JT, I want to ask you about you're getting everything organized. Big East play. There's a lot of promotions going on just in general, and then with you guys, with the Bluebird Army. So what are you most excited about going into Big East play? Not just with the team, but obviously, with the kind of promotions and great games that are coming up, especially because UConn opens Big East play, and then first home game after the new year, Marquette rolls into town, the preseason favorite and the reigning conference regular season and tournament champs.
Yeah, that's another just not ideal scheduling where UConn right after finals, everyone's going home. Like I'm staying. I'm from Vermont, so I'm just staying in New Jersey. There's no reason for me to go back to Vermont and drive back down for UConn. So I'm staying. I'm not missing that game. Marquette, like I'm hoping people come out for Marquette, even though it's over break. I'm driving back down from Vermont. I'm not missing the Marquette game. Like these are big games where, yeah, we're not favored, but they're top 10 teams in the country and they're fun teams that are really, really talented college basketball programs and well coached. That I'd like the student population to be there to make some noise and at least make it hard for them. I remember my freshman year, so it was 2 years ago now, when we played Texas. Chris Beard, after the game, said that it was a top 5 student environment he ever played in or ever coached in. And, that's lofty expectations. But, my goal when coming in with Blue Beard Army is to kind of have that sort of energy. I want it to be a hard place to play. That doesn't happen overnight. So you need some students to buy in and promotions to hopefully help with that. So like with UConn, we don't have any like specific promotions, but we will have Frank the Tank back courtside with us in the student section. That always gets people going.
Let me say, and this follows up. Last point we're going to make about that Rutgers game, because Tim's been bothered by it, and I was in the building, and I felt bad that you guys filled the student section. It was the biggest crowd maybe since that Texas game. I don't think you even had a crowd that big last season, unless it was UConn or Villanova. I don't think you had a crowd that big last season for that Saturday night, right before finals. All the stars are aligning for that Rutgers game. You guys brought the noise. Unfortunately, the guys in the white jerseys didn't bring the same type of effort, because I think that had they made that a more exciting game, you guys could have been a big difference in a game like that, because the game your freshman year, right after that Texas game, I was in the building for the Texas game, not in the building for the Rutgers game. But clearly that night, the Rutgers game, you threw a pretty good Rutgers team that year off of it. I think Rutgers made the tournament that year, if I remember correctly. Barely, and you guys threw a pretty good Rutgers team off of their game by being loud for that Hardwood Classic in 2021.
Yeah, I remember like that Rutgers game my freshman year and that Texas game my freshman year is like the moment where I was like, this can be something. Because when the students buy in like that, and it is like the Prudential Center can have like an electric atmosphere. When that flag gets going, like we didn't have the flag last year. Bluebeard Army wasn't a thing last year. It just kind of went away, which sucked. As a student, I was like, the flag is kind of iconic to what we do. Like that flag starts waving, like I'm holding it at the bottom, and you can't contain the smile on my face. No matter the game, it's like, yeah, we may get blown out today, but we got this flag going. The students are ready. We're going to make our noise, and we're going to control what we can control. Yeah, sure, that Rutgers game was awful. We had the student section packed. I was so
Yeah.
happy that to have every seat filled for the most part, with only a couple Rutgers fans sneaking in. But we made sure they heard it, and they're those who decided to sit with us. But you know, we we made some noise. One of the things we started this year, you see schools like Villanova, UNC, Duke, or West Virginia. They have like the chant sheets that you hand out in the sections.
Yep.
Some people think they're tacky or a little, or kind of like,
Corny.
yeah, and they can be. I can totally see that argument, but for the most part, because Seton Hall is a commuter school and has just, for the most part, a freshman population on campus, I feel for the most part, it's freshmen that are going to these games because the buses go from campus, they're going to bring you there, and the freshmen, they may not know what to expect. Like me coming into my freshman year, like I said, I'm from Vermont. I started watching Seton Hall basketball as soon as I chose Seton Hall. I think the only other Seton Hall game I had watched was the tournament game versus Wofford in 2019 because I picked Wofford in my March Madness bracket.
Good call there.
I cursed my time here because my bad. But like you have a lot of freshmen that don't know what they're going to get and don't know what to do or what to expect at games. So it can at least, have step by step of when this happens, we do this, or just the cheesy things of like when we have a free throw, put your hands in the air and do the wiggle of fingers, magic hands. It gives you a step by step of what we want and what we expect, as well as chants like, hey, we want you doing the Let's Go Pirates chant. We want you loud saying defense when we're on defense. Like, yeah, they're basic chants, but it gets the people going. And I know people have started to look forward to them because one of the things we also do with them is like we put dirt per se on the other team. Like was it the Northeastern game? Not a big showing for students because it's Northeastern. I think it was on. I forget what day of the week it was, but
It was a Wednesday night.
Yeah, it was a Wednesday night versus Northeastern. Like it's not going to get the biggest showing. But one of the pieces of dirt we had against Northeastern, one of their players, number 9, Luca something, he was a grad transfer from Harvard, and I put on the sheet like, how about an academic downgrade going from Harvard to Northeastern? Even though Northeastern is a fantastic school, but naturally some students started chanting a Harvard dropout chant, which I know some people thought was a little corny, but it got the student section involved, and we're starting chants naturally and getting into it, and that's progress. Even if it's technically he graduated from Harvard and wasn't a dropout, but it got the people going, sort of thing.
And I mean, something to bear in mind also that you can't in the Ivy League, you can't stay on for a 5th year. Like you have to go somewhere else. Like it's a rule. That's why Bryce Aiken had to come to Seton Hall, which is great though.
Was it?
I thought
well, not until Greg Elliott had something to say about it.
Well, yeah.
I thought
what do you got cooked up for? You got anything cooked up for Klingon? You don't have to tell us what it is, but you have something cooked up for Klingon?
I just, like I said,
if you can't tell us, I'm just
on the sheet.
Yeah, I mean, you're at least doing your research.
I can read the sheet for you. Donovan Klingon, 7'2", sophomore, number 32. Weighing nearly 300 pounds, Klingon constantly moves like a clumsy, bumbling fool that has to take a shit.
That is oddly specific, but I respect it.
It's just a little line gets the people going.
It's for the laughs. It's like nothing. Like you're just trying to get some laughs.
No, it's like especially during the Monmouth game. Like I took note of it, especially it was fun during the Monmouth game because it was low attendance and like we were having back and forth with the Monmouth bench there, and they were respectful with it. We were respectful with it. Like we never want to cross a line. End of the day, it's college basketball. And they're students just like me, so it's like I don't want to be to the point where I'm causing Seton Hall to look bad or causing actual disrespect.
Yeah,
but just slight disses in there that are fun and can get people riled up because I know it's been pretty cool, especially for me with making these sheets of people sitting down in their seats, reading them immediately, and then seeing someone laugh at it. All right, they're into it now, and then they know who some of the players are. I'm like, oh, this player's 300 pounds and this is how he plays. But he's also one of the better players in the Big East.
Well, Timmy can vouch from his days with the Sign Mafia, so to speak, about some of the interesting things that they would cook up against their. I mean, basically, they took your little dirt sheets and they put them on 8x10 cardboard cutouts and showed the world. To this day, JP McCura, I think he's in the G League now.
No, I think he's in Europe somewhere.
He's in Europe now. Well, he played for Xavier, and they probably had the most notorious thing where he got caught underage drinking someplace, and
a little bit more on that. Like
the Sign Mafia immortalized JP McCure to the point where I think that they threw a few people out of the section.
They confiscated my sign. I got it back afterward because it had his infamous mugshot on it. But I got it back, thankfully. The security guy, because I was cool with them, like they were like, I'm just gonna take it away from you, but I'll let you have it after the game. Like, okay, deal. Because it's iconic. And what was great, I mean, you talk about like having that like funny back and forth. JP, I interviewed him 5 years after that. I'm like, he's like, if I was in your shoes, I probably would have done the same thing because like game respect game. So and like those funny, it's all those things you're saying, JT. It's like I'm talking to 2017 me. It's so weird, but it's great at the same time because I also did chant sheets during my senior year when I actually ran Bluebeard Army as the official president. I can definitely give you hell, I'll even email you after this. I'll email you the chant sheets from before. There's a lot more than Let's Go Pirates and defense. I got a lot more for you on that. But yeah, it's funny, all the things you're saying about like being respectful, having light jokes and just joking around with them rather than getting personal. I would hate it when anyone would throw family in there and like that's like talk about it going over the line. The second you mentioned family, stop it. So
it was funny last game with Monmouth there. Xander Rice there, son of the head coach there, King Rice. And I was chirping him pretty good because he was directly in front of me on an inbound pass. And he had missed a layup right beforehand. And I yelled over to King Rice. I go, Coach, you didn't teach your son how to make layups? He visibly started laughing.
I think that's fair game though, because look, I mean, he wanted his son on the team, and they're basketball guys. So it's not like you're mentioning like a relative who got arrested for, he's a basketball coach, and he put his son on the team, and his son makes this mistake. He's going to hear. I don't know if he's going to hear worse than that in other places because maybe when Monmouth plays like Charleston or Delaware, he might hear that type of stuff. But I don't know if he's going to get. I don't know what type of crowds he's going to face on the road. He probably has people at Monmouth telling him that for crying out loud when he makes a bad play. So, that goes with he knows that goes with the territory.
Yeah, it was pretty lighthearted stuff where it wasn't anything where I was like, I'm crossing the line here, but I laughed because I got Xander Rice pretty fired up. I said something when he whipped around, started yelling at me. I'm like, all right, cool, man. And then he got the ref, and the ref came over and was like, hey, let's leave family out of this. I'm like, oh, his dad's the coach. I'm just really talking about the coach. He's like, all right, you're good then. I'm like, perfect.
So, yeah, I mean, if you're like getting really insulting by like talking about like maybe some like more personal stuff, like rather than like his actual in-game performance, like then okay, then you need to address it. But if you're just like clowning, like you're gonna tell your son to make a layup, like I don't see like I mean like make the layup if you don't want that being thrown your way. That's at least how I see it. So, but yeah, no, it's just really great that, and trust me, when I heard last year that the Bluebeard Army wasn't even a thing, that it honestly broke my heart. It really did. Cause as you know, JT, like I pushed going into my junior year because it was still known as Pirate Blue Student Club, but the name of the student section was still the Bluebeard Army. I'm like, we're having an identity crisis here. Gotta make it work somehow. So I busted my ass to turn BBA into what it became. Essentially, it was like, I walked so a guy like you could run. I'm not trying to like, hype myself up or, like make it sound like I'm just like a pioneer or a mercenary. But, at the end of the day, like I was, trying to build something so that future generations, they can keep that going. So when that happened last year, yeah, heartbreaking. So I'm glad that it was a guy like you, your initiative and your vision, like the same vision that I do. The fact that you got it back to this, it makes my heart feel whole inside. So shout out to you, my friend.
Yeah, I appreciate it. But that was one thing this summer when we were like trying to get the ball rolling. Like we want this back. Like it's unacceptable that it was gone last year. We're like, I want this to be something that 20 years down the line, I can be watching Senior basketball on TV after 3 consecutive national championships and be like, oh, there's Bluebeard Army sitting in the front row. Again, the student section rowdy. I want it to be something that is long lasting and something that people want to join. And I've had people come up to me already like, hey, like, is Bluebeard Army taking people to join? I don't really know what it is right now. Like, it's like I know it's existed before. Like, you're obviously a former president, so respect. But it's a thing where it's like I don't. It's still kind of new and trying to figure out which direction we're trying to go long term. And I think next year we want to be something that can potentially be a club that more people can join. And it's a more like it's a full experience. Like we want the rowdiest people. We want the people who are bring the most energy, and they're going to sit courtside with us and will wreak havoc per se. And
Yeah,
we'll make the opponents walk the plank.
yeah, and it's hard, like, considering that it wasn't a thing last year. Essentially, you got to go back to square one.
Yeah.
Whereas there was already kind of something going on with the Army. Is just like got to merge Power Blue Student Club, Bluebeard Army, the student section. We had to make them one, and it wasn't clubs that people could join, and there would be incentives like go on these road trips, go into the garden, or even like bus trips to other like small sporting events like volleyball and even like doing events. And I know y'all still have to still do it, like with soccer and obviously pancake night and stuff for volleyball. And then for baseball and softball season, like baseball being my wheelhouse, like looking at some of the guys that we have, and at least the teams I have were pretty spectacular. Some of the talent that we had, including a guy that, who knows, might see him in the big leagues come 2024, but we'll see. I mean, yeah. So from your perspective, what's in the works regarding not just basketball, but keeping Bluebeard Army, taking it from square one, and then essentially resurrecting it?
Yeah, so like you're saying with other sports, like the focus obviously it's primarily men's basketball right now.
Of course.
It's the obvious move. It's men's basketball, it explains itself. But we're trying to branch out more. Where again, it's new and trying to figure out like how we can implement in other places. Like I'm a huge soccer fan. Soccer is my favorite sport. I love going to the men's soccer games. And so come next season, we want Bluebeard Army to be at the men's soccer games, the women's soccer games, and be loud at those games. We want to be able to go to the volleyball games and all these other sports and support Seton Hall athletics, because it shouldn't just be Bluebeard Army. We support men's basketball. At Bluebeard Army, we're for the Seton Hall student athletes, not just men's basketball. Like the other day we went to the women's basketball game versus FDU, and we were just trying to make some noise there, and it was cool because it was pretty quiet in there, and there was just 3 Bluebeard Army goons making some noise and trying to get some atmosphere going, and it was a cool experience. It was like, all right, like this is a lot of fun. I don't know how much of the women's basketball team you've watched. Micah Gray, bucket. She's a baller.
I was there Saturday, and that team was. I mean, maybe they were playing out of their minds on Saturday, but whoa, that's probably as good a Seton Hall women's. And I saw teams that made Sweet 16s 30 years ago. So that team has some. That team has some real talent, and I'm hoping that we finally break out of our. I don't think we've made the women's tournament in 5 years. So
Actually,
nice.
It's been even further. 2016 was the last time. That was my sophomore year, and
so
I
it's
mean,
7 years.
Yeah, it's been a while, but I'm
they're
telling
overdue
you,
to make. They're overdue to make it back at the dance, and I don't want to hear the excuse that UConn's back in the Big East, because our women's team can be as good as Marquette, as good as Villanova, as good as Creighton. I mean, we took Creighton to double overtime 2 years ago in a game that if we won that game, then we make the tournament.
Instead of the WNIT, which was great making the championship, but it was great that you bring up women's basketball, because I definitely didn't want to end the show. I wanted to give Coach B his flowers for not just beating 23rd ranked UNLV and handing them their first L for the University of Nevada Las Vegas, but to beat them by 30. That I'm telling you, like, given how the conference is looking, that opens the door. They sent 5 to the tournament last year. We all know who the top 4 are, but if Seton they could the whole brass ring, they could take it and get that 5th spot, maybe get one of the last 4 in, because they are more than capable of it. So I wanted to give Coach B and his team their flowers. That just a remarkable, impressive win. And they almost beat Princeton at Jadwin Gym just a couple weeks ago. Taking him to double overtime. But I'm telling you, like, Coach B, and even he may not have the star power like he had with LPL and Sidney Cooks, and even before that, Andre Espinoza Hunter. But Coach B's cooking something there. They may not be as much of you may not have as much star power, but they are a well-rounded group, and that's what makes them even better than the last couple of years, which is big time. So before we sign off, I gave my last thoughts. JT, anything you want to plug before we sign off and call it a day?
You talked about promos earlier there. Well, I can't say specifically what it is yet. You're going to want to be at the St. John's game, especially students, January 16th. We got a big promo for the St. John's game, which is going to be pretty cool. A video should be coming out shortly. I'm pretty fired up for that game.
First game from break, right?
Yep, it's right back from break. If people are on campus, where are you? Like Pack Prudential Center. I think that game could be a lot of fun. But yeah, keep an eye on, if you're not following the Bluebeard Army page already, at Bluebeard Army on Instagram, follow it. Keep everyone updated with promos, just giveaways. We're trying to improve the following and get people more aware of Bluebeard Army and boost its following in general. So, be excited.
So, from one BBA present to another, JT, can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us here on Hoist the Colors. And gratuitous time too, because you just finished your last final, and like, what better way to celebrate than being on a Seton Hall podcast with a couple of different generations? You got class of '95 over here, class of 2018 over here, and now worlds are colliding here, especially with now the current leader of the Bluebeard Army. I'm glad that the torch has been passed, from one to the next, and obviously you're taking it and taking it in stride. So thank you for taking the torch and running with it and getting Bluebeard Army back to the level that I try to build it up to, and keep doing what you're doing, and I trust you're going to have the Army loud and proud for UConn Wednesday night, and of course, well beyond.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on too. I appreciate this. It's awesome.
So that's going to do it for Hoist the Colors. For Pat Madden and our special guest, JT Nordenson, I'm Tim Best. Thanks for tuning in once again. We'll see you after Christmas, where we'll recap the UConn game as well as a battle on Festivus. Hopefully we won't have to do an arrogant grievances after they play Xavier, or how this week goes. But until next time, we'll see you after Christmas. And again, until next time, onwards to Tonia. Take care, y'all.